In Big Pharma, you have hundreds of people discussing, should we do this and that? You make a decision, 2 weeks later, you start redoing the decision. You don't have time for that in biotech. You don't have the time, you don't have the money, and the people working there, they don't have the patience. Yes, we may in between be competitors, but we are working for one single goal, and that is to bring better treatment for patients. And instead of treat symptoms and disease, then start thinking, let's try and go for cure.
What if the secret to real innovation isn't just brilliance, but patience? In biotech, breakthroughs don't happen overnight. They're built through years of persistence, focus, and trust in the process. In this episode of Stories in Life Sciences, sponsored by MedAccess AI, we're here with Dr. Kjøller, co-CEO of Union Therapeutics, and he shares how discipline and collaboration fuel Denmark's biotech ecosystem and why patience may just be the most powerful strategy for innovation.
I just want to start off with a little bit of your journey to where you got to Union Therapeutics now. I know you started off in medicine and then have kind of had a long history with Big Pharma, transitioning into the role you're at now, and just a little bit about your journey and your story and what you're up to at Union.
The background as a medical doctor is, of course, very important because that makes you very humble as a person. So the first lesson I learned in Sanofi, where I worked as a medical director, was that those guys in sales and marketing, I could do that a lot better. So I went to my boss and said, you need to put me in sales and marketing, and then you will see some really radical stuff. And then he put me in sales and marketing, and then I found out that was not quite as easy as it looked like. And I learned humbleness the hard way, which I think is healthy from all of us. And basically moved on to global position in strategic marketing in Lundbeck. And that was another lesson. You sit in a country in an affiliate, and everybody that works in affiliate knows that when headquarters come and say we are here to help, that is certainly not what they are there to do. So then you get into to headquarters, and you sort of say that, every time you go to the affiliates, they say, but that won't work here because we are so different in Denmark. And you sit in headquarters and say, but they all look the same. So there are these important lessons that can't be taught. If you are in an affiliate, you need to go to headquarters. If you're in headquarters, you need to go to an affiliate. And then that's you learn by doing, basically. You also learn, as you alluded to, Chris, that things take time in pharma, and that's probably the most difficult thing to learn. That's patience. You really have to be patient. Innovation takes a long, long time, and most innovation, unfortunately, dies on the way to help patients. You really have to keep at it, power through, and have a good sense of humor while you're at it. The final thing is you're going about Big Pharma, and there you learn a lot, and you really learn the important things of drug development, pricing, access, commercialization, how do you do sales? And that is super, super, super important. And when you have been there 15 and 20 years, you say, yes, but why do we have to be regulated by 20,000 subs internally? Is that really necessary? And why do things have to take so long? And then you find yourself in biotech, where a small team can do an awful lot. But the only reason that small team can do a lot is that they are all seasoned pharma people. So they have been through the ropes. They know what good enough looks like. We don't need to discuss that. In Big Pharma, you have hundreds of people discussing, should we do this and that? You make a decision, 2 weeks later, you start redoing the decision because I think I got a new idea. You don't have time for that in biotech. You don't have the time, you don't have the money, and the people working there, they don't have the patience. And that decision power is really what brings, I think, biotech faster to either failure or success. But it wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't been brought up in pharma.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like sometimes in such a hurry to go directly to the startup and building companies, but that experience, even though sometimes, at least for me, I didn't always enjoy it at the big companies, you learn a lot of those lessons which help you once you get to the stage you're at now. I guess with Union, it seems like you've made some significant developments lately. I was looking at some of your later stage products. Are there any different approaches you feel like that you're maybe taking to others that are in the space to bring those therapies to market?
We've been fortunate enough to get a molecule out of pharma, so you can say the basics was really well covered. and well described. And then we took it and we basically looked for differentiation, looked at diseases where we felt that this might have potential, tried to use all of the data available to see should we go in one disease direction or the other, and have ended up delivering proof of concept in as diverse diseases as psoriasis, atopic dermatitis, and hidradenitis suppurativa. And I actually don't think that there is another molecule that have done that. And it is, of course, you need to have the right molecule for it, but it also this understand what the molecule can do, understand the diseases so that you know the immune pathways that are very different in psoriasis from AD and then again from HS, but to see that you have a molecule that can actually cover all three of them, which is really phenomenal and super exciting. But of course, then you run into the challenge as a biotech, you can't take all three forward. So how do you choose the best one? In essence, I think we could probably register in all three indication, and it would be a good, safe oral molecule in this sea of biologics. So have a lot to offer to patients, but we will only be able to fund, only be able to fund one indication, but that's no small thing. So here we go with hidradenitis suppurativa, where we see the biggest unmet need. We don't really have fantastic treatments today, and we just happen to have an extremely well-positioned molecule that will be likely best in class on the lesional side of things. It also addresses pain that other molecules don't really do in this patient population, and pain is their worst symptom. And then, unfortunately, these patients, they have metabolic syndrome. Most are overweight. So they have a 2.5 excess risk of cardiovascular, both morbidity and mortality. And lo and behold, we also work on that side. So we have a weight loss in 16 weeks in our HS study of close to 5 kilogram, and good indication that we have metabolic benefits. So it's the package where we say it's like this molecule is made for this terrible disease. And we do also have a fast track with FDA.
Oh, that's exciting. What unique advantages do you see with the biotech landscape there, specifically in Denmark, for you all to be developing in general in that landscape?
I think as we Danes take it for granted. When I was heading up the R&D function at Leo Pharma, which is sort of a mid-size company with a turnover of 1.5 billion, we were reshaping our project organization, and I was like, I hope I do it right, because it's a big effort and it's a lot of potential money at risk here. And then we reached out to the head of R&D at Novo Nordisk, that is like 20 times bigger than Leo Pharma, and said, hey, we are reshaping the organization. Could I come and share with you what we are thinking and then get your honest input? He said, sure. So we went, and he said, oh, that's pretty good. I've been thinking that about myself, but maybe it's a too big a change for us where we are right now, but I would definitely go with that. And then I said, okay, but we have some issues with the project organization. How do we get the right folks in there, and how should we manage it? And then he says, you can have our organogram, and then you can take a look at that. And then he called out to his executive assistant and said, hey, could you just print it out for Kim? And it's like, no CDA, no nothing in place. And she was like, yeah, but can we really do that, Mads? And he said, yeah, you can do that. And I think that's very typical for Denmark. When I was in Lundbeck, you have a challenge. Well, you share and you discuss. The CEOs of Leo, Lundbeck, and Novo, they meet, they discuss. It's common challenges, common agenda. If you are in biotech, we share. I have a good former colleague working in another part of Denmark. If I have a challenge preclinically, I call up Thomas and say, what should I do? If he has something clinically, he calls up me and say, hey, should we do like this or that? And I say, yeah, let's talk about it. It really is and it's not something you can put in a formula. It's just...
Yeah.
Everybody tries to help. You reach out to a professor. It's not, I'm going to sign a contract with you. I'm going to have $700 per running hour and 2 hours preparation time. No, they said, yeah, hey, cool. Let's come down here and let's have a coffee and discuss for an hour.
That sounds nice. I want to live there.
And it's super productive. Super productive.
The culture seems uniquely built to be successful within a challenging market like biotech.
If there is one thing that you really need to have and it doesn't matter whether it's Medtech, it's pharma or hospitals or whatever, you need to have trust, and you need to appreciate that, yes, we may in between be competitors, but we are working for one single goal, and that is to bring better treatment for patients. And we all know patients, either we are it ourselves or we have close relatives, and we wish that there were better treatments. And that's why we're here. It's the sole purpose for us.
Yeah, being tied to that mission is super helpful too. Any challenges that you see in Europe in general, but in Denmark specifically, with innovation, with creating products there within that landscape, but then getting into the US market?
All European companies and probably global that have been on that journey, even back when I was in Sanofi and they went to the US, brought back their own molecules in the US and started commercialization. It took them 4 to 5 years to sort of understand the US market, get it right. This massively fragmented private health insurance. On top of that, pharmacist benefit managers even try to set down, the price of your product. Can I figure out what the selling price for the patient will be, even with all the things in between? I can't do it in the US. I can't do it. There is no transparency in that system. It is super, super, super difficult. And you come with a European mindset that if prices are too high, we don't have the right access, well, we probably need to discuss what is a fair price then. You go to a pharmacist benefit manager and say, I think $500 for this medicine is perhaps a little bit too much on a monthly basis. What about $250? And they say, well, you can do that and we won't cover you. What? Come again? Why? Yeah, but they are rebated on the gross price. So if I lower that, then the 10% discount they get is less, so they have no interest in that. It is what it is. You have to embrace it. You have to go with it. You have to say this is dramatically different anywhere else in the world. But it is the single most important market, so you better figure it out.
Is that even a goal at some point for you all to approach the US market, or just focus on Europe?
Don't get me started there. That's difficult enough because no one market is the same. We may have a European Union, but price and access is national. Everything is different and individual between the countries. No two countries are the same. That's sort of a nightmare. But that's where European companies have worked, and that's where they focused on. And then when you all of a sudden in an organization say, yeah, but hang on, we're not really selling much in the US, and that's the biggest pharma market. Shouldn't we be selling more there? And you say, yeah, and when does that start? Well, that starts very, very early on in development. We're not talking phase 3. We're not basically even talking phase 2B. We are in phase 2A, where you have to figure out this new molecule. What does the regulatory and access part look like for the US? And then you design solely for the US. And if you can make that also work in Europe, great. But your sole market has to be the US. It's a must for biotech. Nobody wants in the US, and all the funds come from the US. Nobody wants to support something that cannot be registered in the US. I mean, it's obsolete. Don't want it. Don't need it. So you better learn it. You better figure it out.
No, that's interesting.
I have to say the good part
too,
is that,
like you said, that's where
from a way. Yeah, no, you need to have a very, very clear path. What is the unmet need? And this is not an unmet need in a European context. It's an unmet need in a US context. What does your US patient look like? Where do they go for their healthcare? What do they have access to? You see it with challenges. It's a challenge in Europe also, but with a massive challenge in the US. You have this new Alzheimer medication, but you need to have an MRI before you can get to it. And the system is not set up to do MRIs on people that have, you can say, early symptoms of Alzheimer, where we can do a difference. If you miss these points, you may end with the first medication for Alzheimer, but you don't get any traction because people don't get access to the MRIs that are needed to start treatment.
Any challenges associated, you feel like, with being in your market but developing a technology? And I see this in Medtech as well. Like, the focus is to get into the US at some point, and that's where a lot of the funding comes from.
Sure.
So, but if you're based over in Europe, how do you tackle that with, like, do you have people on the ground in the US, or like, how are you working to solve a problem somewhere else? Like, doing that?
Fortunately, I usually say you cheat. So you find a couple of clever physicians that are not just extremely good academically, but also knows how the system works in the US and know what drives prescription and dare to be honest about it. So in our field, you can say of immunology, you have a lot of secondary care, so dermatologists working in small private practices. They don't have much time for each of the medical patients. Maybe they have 5 minutes. If you have to instruct a patient of how to self-inject, it's game over. You don't have that time necessarily. If you have to talk to patient about rare but serious side effects in a black box warning on a medicines where it's a joint decision, maybe you can have one of these patients weekly. The medication may be extremely effective, but it won't get used for that reason. It's simple, too much hassle to use. If you have blood work that people have to come in with, doesn't work in that private setting. It doesn't work. So you come with something that maybe is a little bit subpar on the efficacy, but it's safe. I don't need to screen patient. I don't need to instruct them. It's a tablet. They can take it. They can swallow it. It's fantastic. And most will get a benefit.
Perfect. So you're engaging with key opinion leaders on the ground, if physicians early during that process.
And importantly, prescribing physician, those that are, in the forefront and seeing 50, if not 100 patients on a daily basis.
No, that makes sense. That's key. I'm just curious too, like on your work with the Danish Life Science Cluster. I'm seeing a lot of these different innovation hubs for health sciences in different countries, and we have one here in the city that I live in. You're on that board there. Just what's going on in Denmark there, and what are you excited about? And just tell me a little bit more about what that is exactly, that Life Science Cluster.
So the cluster have been put together by the Ministry of Commerce and to obviously support the larger ecosystem, but in a sense more than that. So in the board, we have made sure that we have all the stakeholders around the table. So we have the owners of the hospitals, which are the regions. We have the owners of primary and secondary care, soon, which are the communities, of which we have 97. And we have the universities, we have the educations, we have Big Pharma, we have Biotech that I represent, we have Medtech. So we have all the players. And the first thing that we did, I think in the first meeting 4 years ago, was to say, we cannot complain this entity over here that makes life difficult for us, because everyone is around the table here. Around the table, if there is a challenge, we basically have the opportunity to do something about it. Not saying that this is easy, because it's not, but we really have the people in the room that can remove the stones in the shoe. It's a little bit about having these honest discussion about what is difficult. Also some of the things that are brought upon us from the big bad outside world that is called the EU system, like this 4-letter word of GDPR. That means that the data that we have collected in Denmark from hospitals on patients since 1977, we can't really work with them due to GDPR. It's wrong, but that has been sort of a common understanding and made life really difficult for a lot of innovative companies, particularly in the digital space. And the irony is that everybody from industry, hospitals, patients really want to see these data be put to good use. We are sitting on a goldmine of information. But that has taken a lot of time, and now it looks like it's coming together and we can find a national solution for that in Denmark. Then we just have to figure out how do we export that to the rest of EU so we can also scale it there. But it's one example of what you can do over time. Now we have a big shift, because the good thing is we are all getting older. The terrible thing is we are all getting older. And that means that we have a growing population living with chronic disease, and we have fewer and fewer children being born. And if we don't change the way dramatically that we deliver healthcare, we run out of hands in maybe 5 years' time. Then we don't have enough people to run the hospitals and take care of the people that needs care. So we really have to reinvent how we deliver healthcare. And thanks to digital progress, I think we all agree we can do that, to move it more out into primary and secondary care, and also start working a lot more diligent on prevention, which is the thing we all love. You need to stop smoking, you need to drink less wine, and you need to start exercising. And yes, I don't like it, but I know I have to do it. But how do we get us, all of us, to then actually do it, which is a huge challenge. But we need to solve this. Otherwise, it won't fly. And obviously, one of the big things that we're looking into now is we talk about precision medicine. Okay, name me one example where we really have precision medicine. And outside a few highly specialized cancer diseases, precision medicine is something that we have talked about for 20 years. And we're still waiting to see it happen. And it's not because we don't have the knowledge. And I would say it's also not because we don't have the data. Maybe we haven't had access to the data the way we would have liked. But this is something, and I know that you think a little bit about AI. This is where we have to set AI loose on these big data sets where we do machine learning and we don't tell the machine what to look for. We just ask them to go look in annotated data set. So we have a lot of information on the patients. We have the outcomes we want to search for. And then we say, could we be better and predict those at risk? If you take type 2 diabetics, everybody should be treated prophylactically for hypertension, lipid lowering, platelet aggregation compounds, what have you. But the truth is that it's probably only 1/3 of those with type 2 diabetes that carries the excess risk. The rest have the same or lower risk than the background population. So why don't we find that 1/3 and spend our energy there and stop pestering the rest of the people's life and say, okay, so you don't eat all of that vegetable. Fine. You don't want to exercise. Well, maybe it's not so necessary for you. Are you smoking? Okay, yeah, well, let's pray and hope that you will do well.
Yeah, that's where I feel like it can really help. Like you said, that's more precision medicine where AI can, especially with that much data that you all have collected there. Exactly. So yeah, get more precise with how we're treating people. That's exciting to me. I feel like we can do so much better with all the information that's out there. It sounds like, well, I was thinking when I was looking at your life science cluster is a lot more holistic than what we have here. We have innovation centers and hubs where some, tech is working with academia, and then you have some investors coming in to try to fund projects. But you're talking about what I'm hearing is like more of an entire national coalition from medicine to innovation to government, all involved and are really collectively trying to solve healthcare in a country, which that's what we should be doing. But we're not doing that here. Well, not quite.
I think, as always in life, the truth is somewhere in between, because we may have a holistic stuff and we're saving the world, but not really getting much traction on it. You zoom in very narrowly. You don't save the world, but you do save some people in the world. And I think that actually we miss a little bit of this to be better to say, okay, we can't solve all the problems. So should we go for type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer, pick a disease, and then go really with force, put the right folks behind it in academia, from industry, from Medtech, and have the funds ready to support it. Then we would see more of the progress that we see in the US. We typically talk about the innovation sort of cliffs in Denmark. When we look at patents and publications per capita, we are number 2 in the world in Denmark. When we look at businesses that is being formed out of these ideas, we are competing with Bulgaria. And I can share with you, Bulgaria is now in top 20 in the world. So what is it that we don't get here? We don't get from the ideas into the innovation. Then when we have innovation, we also need to go to sales, and that's just another problem down the road. So there are some things here that I think in your ecosystem in the US, you are much better in taking these ideas, spin them out of academia, have professors that are rock stars at MIT because they have 200 patents. I tell you, when I went to med school, I'm sure there was somebody, I hope, that had a patent, but we didn't know about it, we didn't hear about it, and they certainly weren't rock stars. But getting that change in and really salute those that not only get good ideas, but take the time and put them into innovation that can make meaningful differences for people. That's what we need to salute. And that's where we can learn from the US and your approach.
No, that's good perspective. You think it's the grass is greener or something, but yeah, that is the case here. I feel like, and I'm seeing it more, and people are getting really creative here with how to get some of these projects to market faster and some of these innovation hubs and being aligned with where some of the funding comes in. And do you see that improving in Denmark as well?
Denmark is probably on the forefront of understanding that we need to do something about this. And we have a government that, although the prime minister is not from a party that I typically would vote for, I have to give credit because that government that is not very well liked, because it's like the Democrats and the Republicans going together to make a government that can actually change something in a positive direction. They have done a lot of change, but they get no credit because those on the blue side thinks it's all red changes, and those on the red side think it's all blue changes. But actually it's pretty balanced, and it's quite good, and it's good common sense, and they are moving in the right direction. They just don't get the credit for it, unfortunately, which I think is a little sad. They have really, really made important change. And I think they have made good strides also in trying to help make it easier to collaborate early and not have the university have to own the patent and then they put them in a box because they don't know what to do with it. But they do allow these patents come in play and can result in spin out companies from university. And we're starting to see that. And that is phenomenally important and very, very positive. And on the other side, we don't have that funding culture you have in the US. Risk-willing capital doesn't really exist, but we have big pension funds. They really appreciate that they have a role to play funding part of the ecosystem. And they also know that it's for them, it's a rounding on the fourth decimal or something. I mean, they can barely see the money that needs to go in. But having these small changes is going to be incredibly important. And when we get that right, maybe in 1-2 years time, then I think we will start to see a completely different momentum in Denmark.
That's exciting about the future. On that note, where do you see the future for Union Therapeutics over the course of the next, what would be a dream for you, 5 years from now?
A dream for me is to see Risperidone being used to treat patients with hidradenitis suppurativa. When you get letters from patients that have been helped with the medicine that your people have worked 15 years to bring to them, that is the greatest reward ever.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. I look forward to keeping track of that. And then what about for the future for global health? Anything for you that you're excited about? I mean, I know we touched on AI a little bit and the chance for it to, obviously with machine learning coming information, but as far as innovation is concerned, or at least in the pharma space, like AI in terms of utilization or anything you're excited about the application for innovation?
It's like innovation comes in sort of steps. And I think in the 90s and beginning of the zeros, we had the biologics entering into the treatment, and they really changed treatment in a very positive way across a lot of inflammatory diseases. And then it went into oncology and it became known as immuno-oncology. And we have seen, I would say, a real revolution there, also now with bispecifics and so forth. So I think that's a good journey, and that's a journey pharma can do because this is incremental. Once you have figured out how to work with biologics, they can build on top of that. So the question is, where does the next sort of breakthrough come? And if we think of it and we think of what controls the immune system, I think one of the things that has always annoyed me a little bit is with a very common disease like atopic dermatitis. It hits 20% of a children population in Denmark and the US. It affects more than 7% of an adult population. So it's the most common of our inflammatory diseases, and it has a huge negative impact on people's life. But when you think of it, 20% have it as children, and then only 7% as adults. Well, clearly, what happened to these 13% that got lost on the way? And apparently there, the disease more or less stopped. They still have some dry skin and maybe a little bit more itchy than the rest of us. But basically, atopic dermatitis stop. What is that switch? We need to start looking at that, whether it's T-reg cells, it's T helper cells, T memory cells, whatever it is. That is where we need to home in. And of course, this is for inflammatory disease, but I'm sure once we have learned that, it will also open up a key to a lot of cancer diseases. And we have these things that are particularly, I think they're good to investigate in skin disease, because if you think of psoriasis, it's a systemic inflammation. But why does it always come back to your knees and your elbows or your scalp and the rest of the skin? There is no psoriasis. How does psoriasis know that it had to home there? And that's the T memory cells that is dormant on these sites. But why? Why only here? And can we do something to shut these memory cells down? And if we did that, could we then really have a cure for these diseases? I think that's sort of the next thing that we need to get our head around. What does true disease modifying look like? And instead of treat symptoms and disease, then start thinking, let's try and go for cure. It's a big word, but unless we really push ourselves, we won't get there.
Yeah, that's exciting. You had me excited to talk about that. That's what gets me curious is why, why does it, as opposed to just treating symptoms of the outcome, like why is that happening that way? Why is that going away over time? Really digging into the science of that. That's exciting to me, like developing those types of super strange. And I feel like you have to be interested in that kind of stuff if you continue this journey like you are, like I am, because it takes a while to figure those things out. They don't get found out overnight.
I hope maybe I will get to see it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I hope you get to see it too. I want to know. I want to know that people like you are working on these things to figure them out. Well, I'm excited. I really appreciate your time today. I'm excited to kind of keep track and see where the journey of Union goes. And in the show notes, we'll have just some info, like the link to the website, different things. So anybody can kind of follow along at their progress and see where they're at. I know you're getting kind of in some of the later stages on some of your drug delivery. So I'm excited to keep tabs and see what happens next, and appreciate your time today.
You've been listening to Stories in Life Sciences, sponsored by MedAccess AI, where we explore people, ideas, and breakthroughs shaping the future of biotech and healthcare innovation. To learn more, visit medaccessai.org and subscribe on YouTube to watch the full conversations and new episodes as they launch. I'm Christopher Wilson. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep shaping the future one story at a time.